Moving on, viewers, Denmark has firmly pushed back against US claims over Greenland, as the Danish ambassador to Washington has rejected remarks suggesting the island was preoccupied in violation of international norms. Ambassador Jesper Moller Sorensen has stated that Greenland has become part of the Kingdom of Denmark for centuries, a fact repeatedly the UN and the international community. It has been emphasized that only the people of Greenland have the right to decide their future, with all 5 parties in Greenland's parliament reaffirming this week that they do not wish to be part of the US or become Americans. The response follows comments by US Special Envoy Jeff Landry, who alleged Denmark bypassed UN protocol after World War II. Denmark has instead highlighted decades of close cooperation with the US in NATO and Arctic security, calling for continued dialogue based on partnership. I request Andrew K.P. Leong, who's an independent Chinese strategist, to join me in this discussion. He's live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Leong, for joining me here. Now, Trump has issued a statement to say that he's a fan of Denmark. So clearly, Denmark and US have good relations. Now, given that Greenlanders neither want to be Americans nor Danes, do you think this is an opportune moment for the US to strike a deal with Denmark that controls Greenland as of now and decide the future of the islanders?
Well, first of all, you've got to understand why President Trump wants Greenland so badly. And the United States is already the world's largest economy, is the world's 3rd largest country by territory. So why does it want to occupy or annex Greenland? The reason is because Greenland has got lots of rare earths, and then rare earths is now the stranglehold by China over Americans' exertion of its hegemony. Secondly, Greenland occupies a very pivotal position in the Arctic passage with the climate change. The navigation route through the Arctic waters becomes more and more navigable because the globe, the Earth, is round. So the northern route is much shorter by distance because it's the top of this round ball, and then there was shorter the passage for commercial and also military shipping, and that's why there is a rivalry with a big Arctic nation like Russia, and of course China is also involved in that. So that's the second reason why President Trump wants Greenland so badly. The third reason is because it provides an additional shield against possible Chinese surveillance through you remember the balloon incident. The Chinese drifting balloon was actually a surveillance vehicle, but it was very, very high, high up in the sky. So high it's not reachable by even the most advanced American fighters, because it's high up over something like 40 to 50,000 meters or feet. But with Greenland, that provides an additional shield, and that's why President Trump wants Greenland so badly. And also, the military option to acquire Greenland is not the only option, because the whole Greenland, even though you look at the map, it's quite large territory, but in terms of population, it's only about less than 60,000 people. Just like maybe 55,000. Now, if President Trump gives each one a Greenlander $1 million US, that translates into quite a good bargain for such a new territory. And the United States, of course, has got the money. It's not, it's a lot of money, but not a great deal by comparison with Americans' financial power. And then you look at the, of course, Denmark wants to defend its sovereignty and is now negotiating or discussing with the NATO members how to defend Greenland, because President Trump is not ruling out a military action. He said, well, by hook or by crook, by force or by negotiation, well, I'm going to get Greenland because of security, he said. Well, then how the NATO countries are going to defend its NATO members except by stationing troops? But Greenland, of course, is thousands of miles away from Europe. And then even if any troops stationed there cannot fight with the might of the US Army. But on the other hand, of course, taking control of Greenland is one thing, occupying it against continuing Danish and Greenlanders' opposition is a different story, because Greenland is a very difficult terrain. It's very cold, icy, and then lots of impenetrable area. If the Greenlanders mount a continual resistance in this very icy, cold terrain, it's very difficult for the United States to maintain continuous control. So we're seeing a very interesting scenario unfolding before the whole world, let alone the loss of the United States credibility, because taking another country just because you want it smacks of course, predatory hegemony. Predatory in the sense you just want to grab what you want. It's the rules of the jungle, and it harks back to imperial Rome. So I think that this American is sacrificing its moral leadership of the so-called free world, of the whole world, in fact. But then, on the other hand, I think that the perceived security kind of concerns override all this. And I think that the kind of stance adopted by President Trump increasingly looks very ugly in the eyes of the whole world community.
Sure. Let's now discuss the presence of China and Russia on the Arctic near Greenland, and the comments that have been made by Donald Trump in that regard, that if US doesn't take over the island, Russia or China will. Now, both these nations have issued statements to condemn Trump's remarks on acquiring Greenland. But noteworthy here is that China has not said anything or responded to Trump's claims that Russia or China will take over Greenland if the US doesn't. Do you think anyway China is in a position to make these statements when it itself doesn't follow the international rule of law and intervenes in many territories on in international waters, including in the South China Sea, in the exclusive economic zone of Philippines that's under contention?
Well, of course, China has always been holding the position the country should respect the United Nations Charter, respecting other countries' territory. That is very, very consistent. And in fact,
but does China itself respect the UN Charter? That's the question. Because if itself it doesn't do that, how does it expect the US to follow suit?
Well, China always follows the United Nations Charter. And people just quoting the Taiwan example, but Taiwan is not a country. Taiwan has always belonged to China, according to the United Nations declaration at the time of Richard Nixon. So that cannot be compared with Russia's aggression over Ukraine.
But I'm citing the example of the exclusive economic zone in Philippines that nation is contesting Chinese presence at.
Well, that's okay. Well, because both countries, both Philippines and China, have different claims, as there are different claims between India and China over the border. But that does not translate into the UN Charter, because first of all, you've got to establish agreed the boundary in the eyes of the international United Nations. But as the border is disputed, as between India and China with the line of actual control, and also between Philippines and China, it's not a comparison. So I think that China still holds fast to this adherence of the international charter. But of course, China doesn't want to worsen the relationship with the United States because there's a meeting coming up agreed with President Trump coming to China. And then you can see that the two great powers are secretly and openly contesting their influence. But I think that the eagerness, the ugliness of the Americans' recent stance towards Greenland suggests that it is in a hurry, suggesting there was a lack of confidence. Whereas you can see that China is now pretty confident in its ability to withstand Americans' coercion because of the stranglehold over the whole world supplying value chain, not just the rare earths, but also anything under the sun is now produced in China, including some pharmaceuticals and daily necessities. So if China wants it, it can all tighten the screw somewhere, and that would affect a lot of the processes and various chain of production in the United States. So I think that China is pretty confident. It's maintaining an even keel. It's not going to worsen the situation. Continue to stress the importance of the United Nations, and in fact that there is a United Nations meeting discussing this, and China, of course, would oppose it, but it doesn't want to go too far. And apart from the fact that there is not much China can do, thousands of miles away. But I think, as I explaining, the Greenland is not a cakewalk. Because in spite of it's a small country, in spite of a small population, it's still a very difficult terrain. Icy cold, sub-zero. A lot of the terrain is impenetrable. If there is continuing resistance, it's very difficult for the United States to occupy that. Control it permanently. But on the other hand, it's an easier route, as I was saying, that the United States pays every Greenlander $1 million US. The total price is not prohibitive as far as the American coffers are concerned.
All right, sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Leong, for your assessment here, but I request you to stay on. Moving ahead, viewers, an investigation has been initiated by South Korean authorities after North Korea claimed its airspace was violated by drones. President